A sepia-toned photograph, a street you have never walked, a song from a decade you never lived, and yet a strange ache rises in the chest, a feeling of profound longing, a quiet homesickness for a place that isn't yours. You miss it. You miss the texture of the air, the style of the conversation, the feeling of a world you only know through echoes and artifacts. This isn't memory. It is something else, a phantom nostalgia, a sense that you were born in the wrong era, a visitor in your own life. It is the heart's quiet insistence that it belongs somewhere else, somewhere in a past it never touched. The echo of an unlived past. It often begins with a fragment, a bar of music from a distant radio, the particular slant of light in a black and white photograph, the smell of old paper and dust. It is a portal, and just as quickly as it opens, you are gone. Not into a memory, but into a feeling. This is the echo, the phantom nostalgia. It is a sensation that lives in the borderlands of the heart, a place between imagination and history. It is the profound, quiet, and deeply personal ache for a time you have never lived, for a place you have never seen. You feel the loss of an experience that was never yours to begin with. This is not the nostalgia of your own childhood. That is a different language. That nostalgia is built from specific, tangible bricks. The feel of the carpet in your first home, the precise taste of a grandparent's cooking, the sound of a specific cartoon on a Saturday morning. It is autobiography. It is sharp, factual, and belongs entirely to you. But this is different. This longing is softer, more diffuse. It is a watercolor, not a photograph. It is the longing for an atmosphere. You don't miss a specific event from the 1920s. You miss the imagined hum of the jazz, the weight of the beaded dresses, the clinking of glasses in a smoke-filled room you have only ever seen on screen. You don't yearn for the actual difficult reality of the 1960s. You yearn for the idea of it, the crackle of the vinyl, the feeling of revolution, the colors of a freedom you have only read about. It is a nostalgia for the aesthetic, for the film grain, for the analog sound. This feeling is, in its essence, cinematic. It is curated. It has been edited. The real-world hardships, the discomforts, the smells, the complex and often brutal realities of the past have been quietly removed. What is left is the romance. What is left is the story. This is its primary power. A personal memory is finite. You can't return to the exact moment of your 5th birthday, but this phantom past is a boundless landscape. You can return to the idea of Paris in the 1940s again and again, because it is not a place, it is a mood, it is a dream space built from the collective imagination, from art and music and literature. To feel this is to feel a strange melodic melancholy. It is not the sharp grief of personal loss, but a gentle, pervasive saudade, a Portuguese word for a yearning that is both sad and sweet, a longing for something absent, something that may never have even existed. You are homesick for a home that was never built. It is the heart's resonance with a story that for some reason feels more real, more true, and more like you than the life you're currently in. It is the quiet, persistent whisper that you are listening to the wrong soundtrack, the echo of an unlived life playing softly just beneath the surface of your own, the ache for another win. This longing does not bloom in a vacuum. It is a symptom, a quiet, spiritual fever that points to a chill in the now. We are perhaps the first generations to be so completely saturated in the present tense. Our time is one of instantaneous connection and overwhelming information. Life is lived through screens that glow with a relentless, curated perfection. It is a world that is loud, fast, and demanding of constant optimization. A world of fleeting trends, digital ephemera, and a present that is documented, broadcast, and forgotten, all within the same hour. And in this noise, the soul looks for an escape. It seeks quiet. It seeks texture. The ache for another one is often born from this profound spiritual exhaustion. It is a response to the tyranny of the immediate. When the present feels thin, rootless, or abrasive, the past, even an imagined one, becomes a sanctuary. It offers a counter-narrative. We look at the digital world and it feels weightless, disposable. So we find ourselves drawn to the idea of the analog, the physical weight of a vinyl record, the deliberate mechanical click of a typewriter, the permanence of a printed photograph that does not vanish with a swipe. We are not necessarily longing for the object itself, but for the slowness it implies, the intention it required. A handwritten letter demanded time, thought, and physical effort. It was a tangible piece of a person. An email or a text message is efficient, but it is a ghost. It has no body. This phantom nostalgia is, in many ways, a yearning for substance in a world that feels increasingly insubstantial. It is a craving for a life less mediated. This idealized past becomes a vessel for everything we feel is missing. If the present feels disconnected and isolating, we project onto the past a fantasy of profound face-to-face community. We imagine neighborhoods where people talked over fences, towns where everyone knew each other, lives lived in deep, unhurried connection. If the present feels commercialized and inauthentic, we dream of a time of craftsmanship, of bespoke quality, of art made for its own sake. And if the present feels chaotic and unpredictable, we curate a past that is stable, elegant, and knowable. We smooth its rough edges. We erase its very real hardships, the lack of medicine, the rigid social constraints, the silenced voices. We conveniently forget the difficulty because it is not the truth of the past we are seeking. It is the relief from the present. The win we long for is a meticulously edited story. It is a golden hour. It is a world washed in sepia where the choices were simpler and life had a clearer meaning. This ache is the heart's quiet rebellion. It is the sound of a deep, unmet need, a need for beauty, for connection, for meaning, and for a sense of permanence that the modern world, for all its wonders, often struggles to provide. The architecture of invented memory. There is a word for this feeling, coined only recently, that captures its precise shape: anemoia. Nostalgia for a time you have never known. It is a validation, a sign that this experience is so universal it has finally earned its own label. But to label it is not to explain it. The how is a far more delicate question, a matter of psychological architecture. How does the mind build a room for a life it has never lived and then furnish it with such profound, intimate longing? It begins with the brain's nature as a storyteller. The human mind is not a passive recorder of events. It is an active weaver of narrative. It seeks meaning. It craves connection. And it is, above all, emotionally porous. When you watch an old film or listen to a song from a bygone era, you're not just processing data, the images, the notes, the words. Your brain is absorbing the emotional texture. It captures the feeling, the romance, the melancholy, the simplicity, the rebellion, and it stores it. This feeling, this emotional imprint, becomes detached from its source. It becomes a free-floating currency of the heart. This is where the architecture begins. The longing for connection may get imprinted onto the aesthetic of a 1940s train station. The yearning for authenticity might be imprinted onto the analog crackle of a 1970s vinyl record. The aesthetic becomes a key. The past becomes the symbol. There is a deeper, more resonant German concept, Sehnsucht. This word is famously difficult to translate. It means more than just yearning. It is a life-longing, a deep, aching, and often inconsolable sense of searching for something, an unattainable ideal, a lost home, a state of perfect utopian fulfillment. It is the soul's compass pointing toward an unknown true north. This phantom nostalgia is perhaps a focused Sehnsucht. The vast, abstract longing of the human spirit has found a concrete target. It has latched onto a decade, an aesthetic, an era, and said, there, that is what I am missing. This is why it feels so potent, often more potent than our own lived memories. Our personal past is complex. It is stained with mundane reality, with boredom, with confusion, and with pain. Our memories of high school are not just the aesthetic of the dance. They are mixed with the anxiety, the awkwardness, the social pressures. But the invented past is pure. It has been curated. It is a collective memory assembled from the very best fragments from art, film, photography, and music. It is a story told by its most passionate advocates. It is the past, with all the friction, all the discomfort, and all the disappointment edited out. What is left is the concentrated, distilled essence. When you long for the 1960s, you're not longing for the threat of nuclear war or the profound injustices of the time. You're longing for the distilled idea of revolution, of communal music, of a seismic cultural shift. This idea is flawless. It is a perfect emotional simulation. The brain, in its search for meaning, builds this space. It builds it from fragments of art and story, and it lines it with our own unmet needs. It is not a memory of a fact. It is the memory of a feeling. And in that architecture, that invented room, we are finally able to feel whole, the shadow of the golden age. A sanctuary, if you stay too long, becomes a cell. A beautiful, self-imposed isolation. The echo of that unlived past, once a gentle comfort, can begin to cast a long and chilling shadow over the present. What was once a dreamy escape solidifies into a rigid belief system. This is the internal architecture of golden age thinking. It is the quiet, pervasive, and often unconscious conviction that the best of things has already passed. The peak of art, of culture, of connection, of meaning, it is all in the rearview mirror. And we are the latecomers, the stragglers, born into the long, slow decline. This is the conflict. The imagined past, flawless and golden, is now in direct competition with the present. And the present, in all its messy, complicated, and imperfect reality, will always lose. It cannot compete. How can a real, flawed human relationship compare to the imagined, poetic courtesy of a handwritten letter? How can a modern song, with all its digital production, compare to the raw authenticity of a crackling vinyl track? The fantasy becomes the standard, and the standard is unattainable. This is where the ache becomes an ailment. It leads to a kind of quiet paralysis, a withdrawal of energy from the life you are actually in. Why bother building, creating, or committing to the now, if it is inherently inferior? Why invest your heart in a time that feels, to you, like a pale imitation, a diluted copy of something far greater? So, you disengage. You become a tourist in your own life, A polite observer, you may participate in the rituals of the modern world, but your heart is elsewhere. You are a visitor, perpetually out of time. This creates a profound, invisible alienation. You look at your contemporaries, at the culture they create, the way they connect, the things they value, and you feel a sense of distance, a gentle, perhaps even sad, superiority. They are satisfied with so little. They do not see the beauty they are missing. This nostalgia becomes a form in which to house your dissatisfaction. It is a noble-sounding reason for your disconnect. I am not unhappy, the feeling whispers. I am just an old soul. But the shadow's deepest trick is the way it protects you from the risk of living. To engage with the present is to risk failure, to risk disappointment, to risk ambiguity. It is to be in the messy, uncurated process of becoming. The past, however, is a finished product. It is safe. Its story is written. Its heroes are canonized. Its aesthetic is defined. To love it is to love something that can never change and can never let you down. It becomes an armor against the demands of your own unwritten life. The irony, of course, is that the people who lived in your golden age did not know it was golden. They were living in their own chaotic, uncertain, and demanding present. They were not focused on their aesthetic. They were just living. They were striving, fighting, creating, and suffering. By turning their lived reality into a static, beautiful backdrop, you miss the very essence of what made it vital. You are in love with the finished painting, but you are terrified of your own blank canvas. What we are really searching for. There comes a moment, perhaps in the quiet of a late night, or in the middle of a crowded modern day, when the longing feels different. It feels less like an echo and more like a question. A gentle, insistent question. What is this, really? This is the turning point, the quiet pivot from fantasy to self-awareness. It is the realization that the human heart is a profound symbolist. It rarely speaks in literal terms. It is a poet, a dreamer, and a master of misdirection. It will often point to a tangible, beautiful thing, a person, a place, or in this case, an entire era, when it is really trying to describe an invisible, abstract need. The longing, you realize, is not for the past itself. You do not actually wish to live with the medicine, the social restrictions, or the profound lack of comforts of that chosen time. You would not survive a week. What you are searching for is not the when, it is the what. You are searching for the qualities you have projected onto that time. The past has become a beautiful, curated vessel for your own unmet psychological needs. It is a metaphor. When you long for the 19th century with its gas lamps and horse-drawn carriages, you are not truly longing for corsets and cobblestones. You are longing for mystery. You are longing for a life with shadows, a life not fully illuminated and explained by a constant stream of information. You are longing for slowness. When you ache for the 1950s, you're not necessarily aching for its rigid conformity. You're aching for the idea of stability, for a sense of community, for a world that felt knowable, where the rules were clear and a life path seemed, at least, to be visible. When you dream of the 1920s, you are not craving the historical reality. You are craving the elegance, the abandon, the feeling of a grand, tragic, beautiful party at the edge of the world. And when you miss the 1970s, you're not missing the inflation. You're missing the feeling of authenticity, the analog, unpolished, raw texture of the music, the art, the relationships, the feeling of rebellion and a connection to the earth. This is the profound realization. The phantom nostalgia is a diagnostic tool. It is your own psyche holding up a beautifully rendered painting and whispering, "This. We need more of this." It is pointing to a deficit in you now. If you long for a time of handwritten letters, your soul is not asking for a fountain pen. It is asking for intention. It is asking for deeper, more deliberate, and more thoughtful communication. If you long for a time of analog music, your soul is not asking for a record player. It is asking for imperfect, tangible, authentic experiences. It is tired of digital perfection. The entire elaborate cinematic dream of the past is a map. It is a map pointing to the parts of your own life that are starved, the parts that are thirsty for more beauty, more connection, more simplicity, more meaning, or more mystery. The search, then, is not for a time machine. It is not about escaping the now. The search is for integration. The search is for yourself. This feeling is not a sickness, and it is not an escape. It is an invitation. It is the first clue on the hunt for a more authentic and fulfilling present. It is the past, holding a mirror up to your present and showing you exactly what is missing. Carrying the feeling forward to understand the longing is not to extinguish it. The ache, once recognized as a map, does not simply disappear. And this is perhaps the most important part of the journey. You are not meant to cure this feeling. You are not meant to scrub it away to become so perfectly optimized for the present that you no longer feel the pull of other worlds. This sensitivity is not a flaw. It is a part of your sight. It is a form of emotional and aesthetic intelligence. The goal is not to silence it, but to learn to listen to it correctly. The task then becomes one of translation. How do you take this beautiful, abstract, and poetic longing for then and translate it into the practical, tangible, and often mundane language of now? This is how we begin to carry the feeling forward. This is integration. It begins by letting go of the literal. You do not need to wear the clothes of that era or furnish your home with its artifacts unless you truly wish to. That is merely decoration. The real work is to embody the ethos. If your heart aches for the analog, for the texture of vinyl, and the weight of a real book, it is asking for the tangible. It is asking for a life lived less through a glowing screen. So you translate. You go for a walk and leave your phone at home. You learn to cook a meal, feeling the ingredients in your hands. You take up a hobby that involves your hands, gardening, painting, mending. You seek out the real, the textured, and the imperfect in your own time. If you long for the perceived simplicity of a bygone era, your soul is not asking for a log cabin. It is asking for focus. It is asking for relief from the paralysis of infinite choice. So you translate. You consciously curate your now. You simplify your space. You unsubscribe. You say no more often. You create small sanctuaries of quiet in your day, protecting your attention as the sacred resource it is. You build a life with less, but better. If you long for the elegance and intention of a time of handwritten letters and formal dinners, your heart is asking for beauty and ritual. So you translate. You write a long, thoughtful email to a friend. You set the table for your own dinner, even if you are alone. You create small, meaningful rituals that elevate the everyday. You choose to see the curation of beauty in your own life, not as a frivolity, but as a necessary act of spiritual nourishment. This is the shift. The longing ceases to be a passive ache, a form of withdrawal. It becomes an active compass. When the feeling of phantom nostalgia arises, you no longer let it pull you out of your life. You let it pull you deeper into it. You stop and ask it, what are you reminding me to do? What quality am I missing? The now is no longer the enemy. It is no longer the pale, inferior copy. It is, instead, the only place where these qualities can be made real. The past, in all its curated beauty, is just a blueprint. The present is the only material you have to build with. In this way, the feeling becomes a gift. It is your guide to re-enchanting your own life. It is the poetic insistence that you do not have to live a thin, fast, or unexamined existence. It is the whisper that reminds you to seek out substance, to create beauty, and to find the timeless in the middle of your own time. The anchor in the now, the echo in the end, never truly fades, nor should it. The photograph still holds its silent allure. The old song still carries the fragrance of a room you have never entered. The longing remains, a quiet companion. But it is no longer the ache of an exile, the homesickness of a displaced soul. It has found its proper place. It has become an anchor. This sensitivity to the past, this ability to feel the resonance of an unlived life, is not a pathology. It is not a sign that you are broken or out of step or failing to appreciate the present. It is perhaps a sign of a deeper sight, a form of imagination that is both poetic and profound. It is the capacity to feel the beauty in the idea of things, to see the story beneath the artifact, to feel the emotional weight of time itself. It is, in its essence, a testament to the human heart's relentless search for meaning. We are creatures who live by story, and this feeling is a story we tell ourselves to articulate a need that has no other words. It is the soul's way of painting a picture of its own thirst. The great paradox of this phantom nostalgia is that it does not, in the end, belong to the past. It belongs entirely to the present. It uses the past as a language. It uses the aesthetics of a bygone era as a vocabulary to describe the needs of your now. It is a deeply personal, symbolic act, and once you have learned to read its symbols, the feeling is no longer a force that pulls you backward. It is a force that roots you where you are. It anchors you in your own life by making you a conscious participant in its creation. It gives you the clarity to see the world around you not as a fallen, inferior version of a golden age, but as a canvas, the only canvas you have. You begin to see that the qualities you yearn for are not trapped in sepia. They are timeless. They are here. The connection you craved in the idea of a 1940s community is waiting in the small, brave act of speaking to your neighbor. The authenticity you missed from the 1970s is present in any moment you choose to be vulnerable and imperfect. The beauty you longed for from the 1920s is available in the simple, deliberate act of making your space a place of peace. The past, which felt like a beautiful sealed room, was only ever a mirror. And the life you are living is no longer a place of exile. It is the destination. You were never born in the wrong time. You are here to bring the qualities of that wrong time into the right one. The ache, when it comes now, is not a sign of loss. It is a reminder, a call to attention. It is the quiet, gentle whisper asking you, what is beautiful? What is real? What matters? And it is here, in the texture of your own fleeting day, in the light fallen across your own room, that you finally find the answer